Welcome to the Kitsap Matters podcast. In each episode, we discuss the people, places, and things that make Kitsap County unique, covering local entertainment, restaurants, business, government, and anything else we find interesting, troubling, or just plain amusing. A brief disclosure, this is a community-focused podcast, not a financial podcast, but sometimes financial topics do arise. And since the host is a licensed financial professional, we have to include the following disclosure in every episode. The strategies and concepts discussed are for educational purposes only and do not represent specific investment, tax, or estate planning advice. Investing carries an inherent element of risk, and it's in everyone's best interest to consult a tax, legal, or investment professional. Kevin Campbell is an investment representative of, and advisory services are offered through USA Financial Securities Corporation, a registered investment advisor located at 6020 East Fulton Street, Ada, Michigan, 49301. Peaks Financial is not affiliated with USA Financial Securities Corporation. Hi, welcome to the Kitsap Matters podcast. I'm Kevin Campbell, and today I'm thrilled to introduce Michelle Doyle. Michelle is a highly skilled interior designer known for her unique blend of artistic flair and project management expertise. Michelle is the co-founder of Bluefoot Architecture and Design. Michelle, thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, as you've probably heard, if you've listened to our show before, we mention at the beginning of every show. If you're familiar with Peaks Financial, you've probably heard of our SAIL formula. The SAIL formula is the system that we use to manage the financial planning process for our clients. It's all about the key components of our planning philosophy. So in the name SAIL formula, the first four letters of the word formula, which is FORM, represent something to us. It stands for family, occupation, recreation, and money. It's all about what matters most and what you can control. So the fun part about our planning approach is that it also provides a great outline for interviews like this. So today we're diving into Michelle's story and what matters to her. So let's jump right into it.
Sure.
So thanks for being here. And this is actually the first time I think you've been back to the office since you designed it.
Actually, no. We were here for a planning session for Rotary.
You were.
Yeah, and it worked out really well.
Yeah. So Michelle did the design on our office here, which we get compliments on all the time.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. People love our office space. So, but let's start off. As we talked about, we're going to follow the format. So, tell us a little bit about your family. What's your story?
I grew up on the south side of Chicago, one of 5 children, and lived there for the first 40 years of my life, or the outskirts of Chicago. I got a taste of Washington State when my husband and I got engaged back in the mid-'80s, and told him one day we're going to live here and we're going to raise our kids here. And he was like, well, okay. And in 2004, I had an opportunity to move here through the company I worked for. At the time, I was in IT. I'd been in IT from 84 until 2004, so 20 years in IT. And really just needed to get out. I was not happy anymore. I wasn't enjoying the work. It was such a grind. And so I left the IT firm I worked for and decided to go into interior design. But I brought my family here. So I've got 3 children with my husband. The oldest is going to be 31 and the youngest will be 27. I don't feel old enough to have kids that age, but evidently I am.
All right, yeah.
They also love it here, although I think one of my youngest son would probably love to move back to Chicago. We still have a lot of family there. My husband's been retired from General Motors at 55 and a half years old. He was able to retire, and he just keeps things going at the old household. We own a nice little piece of property, about 8 acres. Very modest home, but a beautiful property, because when we moved here, we promised our daughter that we could get horses. That was one of the carrots that made it okay for us to pick up and replant our roots somewhere else. And so we did. We owned horses for a while, and the kids are grown and figuring things out for themselves. And we're an artistic family, so one is in the arts, and my daughter works in veterinary medicine as a tech, and my youngest son is pursuing blacksmithing, which is kind of cool. He would not have gotten exposed to that if we hadn't moved here. My husband still keeps things together on the home front. And we
so
also
that's
have,
unique. Blacksmithing, obviously, is one you don't hear a lot of, but I've actually heard that. Actually, my son, who's over here running our cameras right now, and I did a blacksmithing class not far away from here, and we had a whole lot of fun doing it.
Yeah. It's great when he comes out of his shop and he's just black. They don't call it blacksmithing for nothing. But he's built 2 forges in our shop on our property, and he's getting his creative juices out and working out his body, and he absolutely loves it. So we hope he can make a go of it as a business, but he's got a lot to learn. And then we do have a daughter, and my oldest daughter is actually my bonus daughter. My husband brought a child to us through his previous marriage. Her name is Megan, and she has a little gentleman's farm in Long Branch on the Key Peninsula.
Nice.
And raises all kinds of animals. And she's also a horsey girl. We were a horsey family for a while, and we're all close. We all really like each other, so it's nice when we get to hang out.
That's great.
And be together, and yeah.
That's awesome. I always love hearing about the journey of how people got here who aren't from here.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, like me, the same thing. It's like we traveled up here. My wife and I traveled up here on business in the early 90s, I think it was, and went, wow, this is so cool. Could you ever imagine, living here?
Yeah.
And then, it wasn't until, 20 years later that I said, hey, you remember that place we visited back in Washington?
Yeah.
What if we remember that cool little town?
Yeah.
Why don't we go check that out again?
Well, when we came up here, it was my husband, my at the time fiance, wanted to introduce me to his family, and they were primarily in the Kent Auburn area.
Gotcha.
And I'd never seen a mountain before. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, so we pretty much stayed I grew up in Chicago, Wisconsin, and Indiana. That was probably the extent of my adventures as a kid. Coming and seeing mountains for the first time was just mind-blowing to me. And at the time, my husband's sister lived and worked in Paulsbo at a bead shop. And I was just like, oh, this is where I want to live. Paulsbo is where I want to live. I mean, obviously, it's very different from the 80s. Paulsbo is more like Silverdale was back then, just getting more crowded. But I just fell in love with the place. I never forgot it. And working in IT, I was a program manager, and we had our corporation was EDS, Electronic Data Systems, and we had a solutions center here in Paulsbo, and I was a program manager, and one of my development teams was here in Paulsbo. So I got to come back and forth here several times. And when we were partnering with Microsoft on a separate project, I was back and forth in Washington a lot, and it was just getting harder and harder for me to not want to be in Washington.
Right.
So
harder and harder to fly back to Chicago.
Yeah, just like, oh. So we just uprooted, and we were just ready for a change, and we absolutely love it out here.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. So you made the change from IT. Now, it was actually I don't know you and I have ever had this conversation. Yeah. That was my previous world too.
Oh, okay.
Before I got into finance, I actually went to a school at SMU for IT engineering, and right across the street from EDS and.
Okay.
Yeah, in Dallas, yeah.
Okay.
So that was my world previously as well. And
okay.
Spent a lot of time in the tech world doing engineering, that kind of thing, building large-scale networks and large-scale wireless networks is what I did.
Okay.
And then, a little over 15 years ago, or roughly 15 years ago, we made that change into the finance world. Mm-hmm. So we both come from the tech background. But how did you end up getting into
interior design?
It's a huge. Obviously, I get the same question. People are like, "That's a big change from."
Yeah.
IT engineering to financial. I'm like, no, I'm still engineering. I'm just engineering different stuff.
Yeah, and I'm still designing. I mean, I design software, and you design solutions that are elegant and simple or whatever. But I grew up in a very handy family. As I said, we weren't. We didn't grow up in privilege or anything. My family was very blue collar. Any home we ever owned, my parents and grandparents fixed everything, and any improvement we wanted to do, they installed carpet, they pulled down walls, and I really loved that process. And I was the girl with the shoe boxes that was always creating room plans and using wrapping paper to make wallpaper and modeling furniture. And I didn't realize that you could actually make a career out of anything like that. Back then when girls were growing up, we could be teachers or nurses,
right,
or whatever, right? I wanted to be a doctor. And that's a whole other story I won't get into because that would end the podcast. But at the same time, I was always rearranging my bedroom, and I always did stuff like that. I always had an opinion about what was going on, and I watched my grandparents and my parents like build rock walls or build additions or whatever, whatever the house needed, they took care of. And so I loved that. I just really was curious about it, and I have a technical brain and a creative brain, which is great. And so when I came here, I was just so tired, like I said. And prior to moving here, my husband had retired from General Motors, and he became a handyman. And we had always fixed up our own houses. And then he would get people asking him to remodel bathrooms or kitchens, and they'd say, "What should we do?" And he'd say, "Talk to my wife." And so I got the opportunity, not even as an interior designer, to help people plan out their kitchens and baths. And I was like, this is so much fun. And
right.
It really was. And so when I left my job, I was like, I think I want to be an interior designer. And my husband had been retired already. And he's like, wait, you're not getting a job somewhere else? Like, wait,
sorry.
Yeah, I want to go back to school. Oh, okay. And so he just got a job at Home Depot, filling paint cans and whatever he needed to do. And when we moved out here, he got a job at a little farm, as a handyman. While I went back to school, and while I was at school, I was told upon graduation, don't go work in a furniture store. You know way too much. Your business background was way too valuable. Just start your own design firm. And I was like, okay. But they don't tell you how to start a business.
Right, yeah.
In school. So I was very lucky to have found a mentor, another interior designer who was so generous with what she knew, who she knew, and just basically took me under her wing. I didn't work for her, but she was like my weekly touchstone, like, how
That's
do I
great.
do this? And she was fantastic. And there was another company that did they did tile and flooring and stuff like that, but they were also sort of builders and contractors. And they also were super generous with me and really kind of carried me through my first 3 years and made sure I stayed in business with their generosity of their knowledge. And I just can't express my appreciation for them enough. They no longer do business out here. A couple retired and the other lady moved to California, but they were very much instrumental in me. I mean, I made mistakes, but they made sure they weren't too catastrophic.
And they weren't fatal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is, throughout my career, I've had several mentors, and one that I still think of frequently, his name was Larry, and I wouldn't be where I am today if he hadn't helped keep the guardrails on and help provide guidance for me. And it was just, those kind of relationships are so fantastic.
Yeah.
When you can find somebody who's willing to give back,
Yeah.
for no other reason than just to give.
Yeah, I mean, and coming into Kitsap County at that time was the 2005. Everybody knew everybody at the time. I mean, if two people knew each other, they were more than likely classmates in grade school.
Right.
Like, everybody knew everybody. So just getting those doors opened for you as an outsider coming in. Not that Kitsap County wasn't more than generous and welcoming, but just people were used to doing business with people they knew. To have somebody go, hey, let me introduce you to these people or these people, that was invaluable. So I'm so grateful for them.
And so how long have you been doing the design side now? So that sounds like it's
05.
05.
Yeah, so almost 20 years.
Almost 20 years.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a whole other career.
Right.
I left IT after 21 years, so I've been doing this almost as long as I was doing IT.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I think it was funny. I was, as you were talking about, thinking about moving walls and doing various things. I was remembering the first time that you and I walked into this space that we're sitting in right now. And I was going, I don't know about this. And you were like, no, we got this. This is going to be fun. You're going to love it. And I'm like, I don't know about this.
It looks great.
It does. It looks fantastic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it came out fantastic. But just having that vision, because I was not a fan when I first saw this space at all. I didn't know how this was possibly going to work. And it is fantastic because it was hideous.
Yeah, it needed a little help.
It was hideous. It was.
I got your back.
somebody got in here with a paint can who obviously wasn't working with an interior designer when they started painting walls in here.
Yes, that is true.
So there was some really bad paint, and there was just a lot going on in here. So so it's great that you have the vision, because we love the office.
Good.
And it's a fantastic place, and it works wonderful for us. But I never would have seen I never would have seen it.
Wow.
So
thank you for taking a chance.
yeah, it was total blind faith. Basically, the way it went is I gave Michelle my credit card number and just didn't look for a while.
Yeah,
right?
no, I think we tried to stay in budget.
We did. Oh yeah, it was totally it was budget was great. Everything came out great, but it was just like. But that was also a really cool process for me though too. And I know we were both really busy, and a lot of your staff and team were involved in helping pull this off.
Yeah, you got to leverage.
We were both really, really busy, and so once you and I talked about it and kind of set the vision, you and I didn't interact a whole lot after that because the teams were taking care of everything. And that was really cool. If for those of you who've never worked with a designer or design team, it was fantastic. Was not only was the design done, a lot of the execution was done. Mm-hmm. I would show up and I would walk into the office and there's new furniture that's already been assembled and it's where it's supposed to be and stuff. It was fantastic. Good. So that was super, super cool. So what do you think is the biggest misconception about what you do in your work?
I hear it from both clients and even from contractors who think that designers are total PIA, to be honest with you. That we're going to, first of all, if you're a client, I think people have this misconception that we're just going to tell you what to do, that the design doesn't involve you. It's all about our vision, and that we're just going to spend all your money. And that's totally wrong. For me, I have failed if I haven't collaborated and created a space that you feel completely at ease in and don't absolutely love. It has to be a reflection of you. I might push a little bit in a few areas, or you might suggest something to me that I, for one reason or another, don't think it might work, and I'll explain it as to like why it might not be a good idea, but ultimately it's your choice, it's your money, it's your space, you're the one who's going to live and breathe in it. So if it makes you ultimately, if there's something there that just really makes you smile and is happy, then I will work around that. So that's one thing is, and I am a collaborator at heart. So I think for general contractors and craftspeople, I completely respect their experience and knowledge. And a lot of them are artists in their own right. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I really love when I can create a space that I walk into and I go, I have no idea what if any of this was my idea, because it's part client and it's part craftsperson when you walk in and you go, oh, this was a total gift of everybody's, skill set. So, especially when I'm working on like really custom projects, custom homes, and everything is bespoke or whatever, is like you have to lean on people who have the experience with different, crafts to be able to make sure that what you're designing, one, will work, two, will last, and three, will you want it to function, but you want it to look beautiful. And it has to feel like natural in the space. So I really love working with people who know their crafts really well. Yeah. Cabinet builders, metal fabricators, even like stair builders, lighting design, any kind of custom anything, when you're working with people who just, even tile installers who are just really precise and good at what they do and can get creative. And I worked with one tile installer early on in my career who was just such an artist, and we did such cool stuff with natural stone that I would not have even been able to do had he not been the person to do the work, because he just was such a craftsman. I just really love that, because that makes it unique, and not all projects get to go that far out, but it still doesn't matter. I shouldn't be the smartest person in the room, but collectively we all have a part to play, and so that's what I love about it. And so designers get a bad rap for trying. We are experts in the room to a point, but we get a bad rap that we don't listen, that it's our way or the highway, and that we're not collaborative, or we're going to slow the process down. Well, as a program manager in my past life, you don't do that. You honor the budget, and if the budget needs to change, you have a discussion about that. You don't surprise people with.
I can certainly say it doesn't slow the process down. It greatly accelerated it. Yeah. I mean, what we did here in this office opening would have taken us a lot longer without you than it did with you.
Yeah, so it's really important that the team is all on the same page and we're all working toward the same goal. And if something isn't going to work, or if a line item on the budget has to change, that you have that conversation first, and then you make a decision based on that conversation. And a lot of times the client's values come into play. It's something that they really value or want. They might be willing to go a little bit more on the budget, but maybe something else has to give. So there are always ongoing conversations, and transparency is key to making sure that happens.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we talked about family, we talked about occupation. Let's switch to the recreation side a little bit. So when you're no, and obviously, you and I know each other from Rotary.
Yeah.
So you're involved in Rotary. It seems like you're involved in everything.
Yeah, a little bit.
So when you're not designing stuff, what is it you're doing with your free time? What are you doing from the recreation side?
So Rotary is a big part of my life. I really love the community of people who are very open-hearted and want to just make this place better. Politics has a way of dividing people. Rotary has a way of bringing people together, despite who you might vote for on a ballot. And that's
we have a pretty diverse group.
And we do have a very
club,
diverse group. And I
By the
love.
way, there's a
I love
shameless
that.
plug for Poulsbo Rotary.
For Poulsbo Rotary.
Yeah, come check us out.
Yeah, so that is a big part of what I do, and especially anything to do with youth and helping youth, in our community and beyond. But the other thing is like, I said I have 8 acres in a humble home, and it's in constant need of work, and we're constantly improving it. And so I say I like to garden, but gardening isn't a harsh enough word, because I move a lot of dirt, pick up a lot of rocks and boulders. So I'm lucky I have a great trainer who makes sure that I don't hurt myself too bad on the weekends when I really get into it and start doing work on my property. I really love that.
And you also did his space.
I did.
Which when I walked in there, because he's also my trainer.
Okay.
I walked in there, I went, Michelle Doyle's been here.
Yeah, I've been here. I was there. Tunnel room 1, and anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I love to work on my property. I wish I could travel a lot more. I would love to travel more. My daughter and I took 30 days to travel Europe after she returned from her youth exchange a few years later, and my mom and I went to Australia on a Rotary Friendship Exchange. And if I ever could slow down work, I would probably do a lot more traveling, just because there's so many things on my bucket list I still have yet to see. I would really love to see. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always important. We talk about that a lot in our financial planning. We talk about bucket list, right? Mm-hmm. And for some people, they want to. They know exactly what day they're going to retire. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I've got clients who've got literally countdown timers going on in retirement, and then I've got other people like entrepreneurs. A lot of us are in this. I throw myself into this category of retirement's not really a thing for me. Just because, not because I can't retire, because I don't know what I would do. Right? I love what I do. I'm good at it. And so, but I, at the same time, I've got to start squeezing some of those bucket list adventures in. Yep. So for me, it's more about freedom of time and place than retirement. Mm-hmm. Where do you find yourself on that? What's Michelle's future look like? Do you go, hey, I'm going to keep doing this as long as I can, or do you go, someday I'm going to retire, or have you figured that out yet?
I would say it's yes and. It's not a no to either. I love what I do. So I could always see, even if I had 1 or 2 projects a year, just to keep me involved and engaged in the design community, supporting hopefully the same clients I've been supporting. I mean, a lot of my clients are clients I've had for years and years and years. And so hopefully doing stuff like that while I bring up another, generation of a design team who can keep the business going. That's my dream. And then do the 30-day travel kind of things. Like, I know that I can travel more if I plan for it. We're just really busy right now, but I know if I decided like really hard, I want to spend, I would love to go to Africa and serve, alongside Brenda or whatever. But I would love to do that. This isn't the right time, but in a couple years I could see where at least once a year I could take a 30-day, I don't want to call it a sabbatical, it's a little extreme, but just 30 days to go off and just really experience a place. And then maybe another 1 or 2 2-week jaunts somewhere. That's my goal in the next couple of years, is to always have a plan to do something like that. And there's no financial reason not to. It's more about, what we're trying to build right now requires a little bit more of my energy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm kind of in the same boat.
Yeah.
And that's my future goal too. Is I actually have clients ask, what's one of my concerns or one of my clients' concerns often is they look at me and go, Kevin's not a young guy, right?
Yeah.
And,
who am I going to get when he
right,
decides
what
to go?
happens when exactly? No, it really is a concern for them,
I know.
right?
I hear you.
Like, hey, and so I tell people all the time, like, look, I have no intention of retiring. But I will at some point slow down some. But I love what I do. I'm good at it, and I've spent one of the things I tell people all the time is I've spent a lifetime getting this good.
Yeah.
Right. Why would I quit now? It's a fun place.
Plus,
to
you
be.
love what you're doing,
Yeah.
and you love helping people, and so
we make a difference.
It's life giving,
Yeah,
right?
it absolutely
it's not.
is.
It's very much a thing that breathes life into you.
Matter of fact,
right.
I kind of fear retirement a little bit.
Yeah,
from
yeah.
the standpoint of I'm not sure I don't know how I would deal with retirement. So I'm sticking around for a while. So now let's talk about money for a sec, right? So this is the last one, is the M. So we talked family, occupation, recreation. Now we're talking money. Who do you think, who or what has been the biggest influence on your financial life?
That's easy. My grandmother. So, I growing up, very blue collar family. My grandparents were Depression era, and they were in my life daily, very much so. Home cooked meals. They never paid for anything that they never purchased anything they couldn't pay cash for. When I got my very first professional job at General Motors at the locomotive group, the first thing my grandmother did was she took me out and bought me suits, professional suits. And then the second thing she did is she said, you need to invest in the 401k. You go talk to your HR and your manager, and as soon as you're eligible, start putting a little money away, just a little bit. If you take it out of your paycheck, you won't even notice it.
Yep. And
she was so right. So I have been investing since I was 19 years old.
Awesome.
Yeah, because it started as an intern job, and then they kept me on full time, and so as soon as I was eligible, I started investing. So, I look at what they had created. As my grandpa was a pipe fitter, and my grandmother was a homemaker. Before they started having children, she was a chambermaid, in a hotel in Chicago, and then she became, believe it or not, a pastry chef in a different hotel in Chicago. She was a really, really, really amazing cook. But they were savers. They fixed everything. They never spent frivolously, but the things that they had were beautiful and nice. I think I might have gotten my interior design skills from her. Honestly, she had everything in her home was impeccable, but they scrimped and saved for everything. And so and my mom is extremely frugal and practical about how she spends her money, maybe too much. Like, she's always afraid she's going to be poor, and she's not. Not that she's wealthy, but she's fine, but she spends like she's poor, and I'm not quite like that. But I think just having those values about how hard it is to earn that dollar and how much you should really try to stretch it, but also to protect it and to grow it. So, it was my grandma. My grandma
That's
was
awesome. And
fantastic.
You're so right. Having starting early is definitely one of the main keys to building wealth, but it's also not how much you make, it's how much you spend and how much you keep.
Yeah. So learning how.
I've met people before, as obviously coming through our office, I'll see people of all walks of life, everybody from people who have significant amounts of wealth down to people who have never made a lot of money. And the interesting thing is a lot of times people who never made a lot of money have done really, really well, and it's because they've lived within their means.
That was my mom. She never had a lot of money, but she lived within her means, and she also invested and had someone advise her, and her very modest, monthly deposit turned into something that now she's 82, she doesn't have to worry. She's not living off her Social Security.
Yeah.
I mean, that helps, obviously, but she's fine, and she's so funny, though. She wants to leave us money. There's 5 of us kids in our family. None of us really needs any inheritance from anybody. It's important to her to leave us an inheritance. And I'm like, Mom, spend my inheritance on me, meaning come hang out with me more. Let's go take some trips.
Let's take a trip.
I
Let's
want
do
the
stuff.
time with you. I don't need your money.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want it. I want you. But in her mind, it's like her goal was always to be the kind of person who could leave her children something, which I really respect and love that about her. But I'm like, Mom, I just want to hang out with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. We see a lot of different perspectives on that as well.
Yeah.
From some people who are legacy is very important to them.
Yeah.
It almost doesn't matter how big it is, but there needs to be some kind of
Something,
legacy.
yeah.
And then there's others who are like, nope, I want to spend it all.
I don't know, bounce my last check.
Right, exactly. I want to bounce that last
Yeah,
check.
yeah.
And,
That's not her.
Yeah.
That's not her.
So, okay, cool. So, what, from your perspective, what does the financial services industry do right and do wrong, and how can they improve?
It's hard for me to say because, well, so, early on, my husband and I got into relationships with companies that really were trying to push annuities and stuff like that because that was their bread and butter. I think so if we talk about misconceptions about the industry, I think in our experience, we weren't always being advised by people who had our best interests in mind.
Right.
They were trading because they knew they would make higher commissions or putting us into higher commission products. And that creates a level of distrust.
Certainly.
Especially early on when you're not, when you're into a 10-year annuity and you're like, I didn't grow at all. Like, you did well, but I didn't do very well. Or I'm going to get penalized if I pull this out and try to manage this some other way. So I feel like, that's maybe something that the industry needs to do. I think having that fiscal responsibility, being on the same side of the table as the client, the fiduciary responsibility. Thank you. Being on the same side of the table as your client, as opposed to having competing interests, is critical. So if you're looking for a financial advisor, you want a fiduciary.
Absolutely.
Period. End of discussion. And I also think it's important, like, at least for me, I look for fee-based because at least I know exactly how my my advisor's being compensated. It's I don't have any problem with anybody earning a great living, and the better I do, the better you do.
Yep.
I'm totally down with that. I want the good financial advisors to stay in business and help others grow wealth. So I feel like when you're talking with somebody who's transparent like that, and I do my best to be transparent as well, because I want to be on the same team as my clients, and you want to be on the same team as your clients.
Absolutely.
Your job is to help people grow wealth. In that process, you can't do that if you can't be a viable business. So obviously, you have to earn a living too. No problem.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
They just need to be.
You make me money, I'll make you money.
Yeah, it needs to. Yeah, we all rise or fall together.
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of the financial industry, because
That
I've
has
seen
changed
both,
a lot over the
I've seen
years,
both
yeah.
sides of that. It's like, ooh, it's creepy,
There's right now, for everybody who's not familiar with this, there's kind of two standards that are used in the financial services world. One is the suitability standard, and the other is the fiduciary standard. And suitability just means, hey, it's suitable for you. It's not bad for you, right?
Yeah.
Might not be great for you, but it's not bad for you. It was okay, right?
Yeah.
The fiduciary standard means that as a fiduciary, we can only make recommendations that are in your best
My
interest.
best interest.
Not in our best interest. So you're absolutely right, and that's what we are fee-based, and here at Peaks Financial, and that's the way that we work. Is if we do well for our clients, we do well.
You do well.
If we do poorly for them, we do poorly.
Here.
Yeah.
I have I think that's
Works well.
I think that's a great model. I think it.
And I will clarify one thing, or not clarify, but the world of annuities is an interesting world, and the problem is not that there are certain annuities I would never use. We want to get into that right now, but there are certain annuities I would never use. Annuities can be a very viable product in certain circumstances. The problem is that for a long time, certain financial advisors were positioning annuities as a replacement for the stock market, and they're not. They're more like a bond alternative.
Yeah.
Right. And so so the problem for a lot of times is that they were being not that it was a bad tool, it's that the tool was being used
misused.
improperly.
Yeah.
Right? So
And
it's like if you're trying to use a hammer when you should be using a screwdriver, it's not going to work out real well.
Yeah.
Same is true here. Is if you're not using the right tool for the right, it's not the tool's fault if you're not using it incorrectly.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I just wanted to mention that because annuities can be, in certain circumstances, the right kind of annuity in the right situation can be a very good tool. The problem is the industry has a lot of people using the suitability standard rather than the fiduciary standard have misapplied the tool.
Yeah, and that is absolutely 100% correct. And so, and I think the other thing is just, I think it's really important for young people to get an education early.
Yeah.
And I don't know how the financial industry and financial advisor industry or the banking industry or even the schools could partner together to help kids understand, money isn't real anymore. Let's face it. I used to keep track of our checking account balance because I wrote checks or I always carried cash. Now everything's plastic. All transactions are just so seamless and thoughtless. That you're not thinking about what's the impact of this $100 purchase on my ability to pay my car insurance in 2 months.
Yeah.
Right. And so I really think that there needs to be, some focus, because a lot of adults, not my age, but in their 30s and 40s who are raising kids have no idea how to teach financial responsibility because they don't
know it themselves.
They don't know it themselves. So like we're creating a lot of potential poverty through this model of just not knowing where your money comes from and how you spend it and what the spend means down the road. So, helping to teach how to be smart about money is, I think, really important to future generations because it's just not. And we live in such a instant gratification society too.
We all spend 40 or more hours a week working for money and then spend no time learning how to handle it.
Perfect. Yeah. Well said.
And it makes the world go round, but very few people spend the time to understand it and learn how to manage it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
All right, last question. Best kept secret in Kitsap County. It could be a hike, a restaurant, a business, a waterfall.
I thought long and hard about this, and I came up with 3, believe it or not. And now I have to decide which of the 3. So I'm going to go with Spiva Cooking in Bremerton. Sam Spiva makes these hand-ground spices and hand-ground spice blends from organic, fresh ingredients. And his products are amazing. He also makes teas. They're organic, 100% certified organic, and they're gluten-free, which for me is important because my granddaughter is celiac. So anytime she comes over to eat, she wants to know what I put in the food, and I'm like, I used Spiva. And she's like, okay. She knows she's safe. She's not going to get sick. So besides being safe, they're just delicious. They're in Bremerton on Lebo.
It's funny you say that. I was just telling my wife this morning that I tried some of their stuff this week, and I met Sam.
Oh, you did?
And I want to have a conversation with him about getting his teas in here.
Yeah.
And I was telling her about having ground turkey, of all things, that he seasoned. Was it a little thing he was doing the other day?
Yeah.
And he seasoned ground turkey, which normally is not something you'll find me going, hey, I want some ground turkey.
I want some ground turkey.
Right. It's not normally high on the Kevin list.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. And it was because of the spices he put on it.
His seasonings are fantastic. He's a trained chef, too. So
Yeah. It was fantastic. I was just telling my wife about him this morning.
And you walk into his store and you're just... the spices just come at you because he has a nice little store, but he also next to his production area, and he'll educate you on his spices and stuff like that. He's such a good person, and so I want to see him be successful. But
so it's Spiva Cooking,
Spiva Cooking,
and they're done in Bremerton
off Lebo.
Awesome, check it out.
Yeah, really great.
All right, anything else you want to add before we wrap it?
No, this was fun.
It is fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for another episode of the Kitsap Matters podcast. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for sharing some time with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
A brief disclosure, this is a community-focused podcast, not a financial podcast, but sometimes financial topics do arise. And since the host is a licensed financial professional, we have to include the following disclosure in every episode. The strategies and concepts discussed are for educational purposes only and do not represent specific investment, tax, or estate planning advice. Investing carries an inherent element of risk, and it's in everyone's best interest to consult a tax, legal, or investment professional. Kevin Campbell is an investment representative of, and advisory services are offered through USA Financial Securities Corporation, a registered investment advisor located at 6020 East Fulton Street, Ada, Michigan, 49301. Peaks Financial is not affiliated with USA Financial Securities Corporation.